Hey guys, welcome to the Gray Zone where nothing is either black or white. Sorry we've been away for a little bit hiatus, but all the holidays and stuff like that. We need a break too. All right. So, to get back into it, we're going to talk today about the Trump era. This is the first year that he has been president of the United States. I would definitely say that his Twitter fingers have been working very hard this last year, so we're going to get into it. This is Check Meeks. We got Juice with the Juice. Say what up.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back.
And then we got Dr. P. Say what up.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Dr. P in the building.
All right. Well, thank you, Dr. P. So if you guys all remember when he was elected to be the president of the United States, the whole country just felt like this very heavy, solemn feeling, this feeling of, what do we do now? The feeling of unknown. Many people have, at that point in time, they took a personal day from work because of what he represented at that point in time. So now that he's been in the office for this past year, what is the current mood of the country right now?
Well, depends who you ask. I think all three of us probably are on the same side of this political spectrum for the most part. But there is another side to America. And if you ask them, they're probably elated. Of all the folks who voted for him, they're getting exactly what they wanted. They voted for this man and all of his, braggadocio, all of his arrogance that he, puts out there into, social media and in interviews and et cetera. They voted for this stuff. And so they're getting it. So they're probably saying, America's mood is in the right direction, et cetera. But at the same time, the other half of the country, the folks who did not vote for him, we feel, or at least, I didn't vote for him. So I feel, that America's divide has probably never been stronger and just kind of temporarily hopeless.
Gotcha. Any thoughts, Dr. P?
Interesting. I actually don't know on that, right? But if I had to pick one word, I would say that people are passionate. I think that Trump comes to office, he makes everyone passionate. Now, whether you're passionately angry, passionately excited and happy, passionately nervous, these are different forms of passion. And so I do think Trump has the ability to bring out passion in all of us. And I'm not going to lie, I'm excited, right? It's good to see people finally nerved about something. And Jay-Z in a recent interview, said that, the manner in which we are conversing about certain topics, probably not the best, but he gave Trump pretty much credit for bringing conversation to the table because we're at least now engaging in dialogue. You know what I mean? Respectful dialogue. I don't know, but we're talking. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I definitely agree with your passion point. If you guys have been following politics, I would say that within this past year, we actually had the most African American women and men that was elected to office this year in these last elections. We even had our first transgender woman that was elected to office. So I really do think that the whole feeling of what do we do now at the beginning of his presidency that has continued to fuel people. They're really those people who sat back and said that, things will handle themselves. Those people now are stepping up and saying, well, we can't let this country go to shit. I need to do something. Let me go out there and vote. And those people who are at the lower levels of the political spectrum, these more attention is being paid attention to. Pay attention to that.
Yeah, definitely agree.
Yeah,
good point. Sorry to jump in here, but I just wanted to say I used the word temporarily hopeless. I want to kind of amend that. Temporarily, people can't really do anything about it since he's the president for the next 3-4 years from now. But you're right about the passion thing. I think that the mood of the non-Trump voters has been enhanced to a level of anger that, I've probably never seen before. Like George Bush was a terrible president,
Yeah.
and a lot of people hated him, but like it doesn't really compare to the Trump thing. It's like he embraces the hate. I don't think Trump
Exactly.
you know what I mean? Like he stirs the pot intentionally. Bush wasn't like that. He was just a shitty. He wasn't a smart person.
And the thing that I found crazy too is that CNN said that Donald Trump has the lowest approval ratings of any president in their first year of presidency. When he was first elected, his approval rating was 45%. Now his approval rating is 35%. That is ridiculously low. I think I can't remember exactly who. I think Reagan was the second lowest. I think it was around like 48% or something like that. It was something crazy, but yes, we do have passion, but also that the fact that the approval ratings are so low, it definitely shows that people are definitely angry. They are not happy. And like you said, Drews, that's fueling change.
So I just want to go back and reconcile two things. One, what the Juice said, that the country is divided because of Trump. I would disagree, especially, of course, we're divided on some fronts, but I would disagree and say that Trump actually, in some ways, bring us together, right? Check Meeks just said his ratings are at an all-time low. You mentioned something around 35, 37%. So that's a lot of people that are, not in agreement with the way he is handling things. And, when you have the same enemy, and doesn't that sometimes bring both sides together? You know what I mean?
Yes and no. Like at the end of the day, he has his base, and it's not like because his approval rating is low. That doesn't mean that there's a whole hell of a lot of the people in the country who are just unwaveringly going to support him in his conduct no matter what. That's what I meant by the divide, is that there's always going to be a Republican base and there's going to be a Democratic base. And in no way, shape, or form are they anywhere closer together, I think, on this matter. I think, if anything, maybe the moderates, the common sense people who are like, maybe we vote Republican, but I'm not like a diehard, or I vote Democrat, but I'm not a diehard. I think all of those people, common sense partisans are probably like, this guy's a fucking, kook. Even Republicans in Congress who are like senators and congressmen have been off the record, saying that like, the guy's crazy. You know what I mean?
Gotcha. Well, we're going to go on to the next question that we have. What do you think motivates Trump?
Ooh, David, go pick.
I think that Drews touched on it a bit. He seems fueled by having an opponent, and I think he enjoys harassing people and getting a rise out of them. I don't think Trump is as dumb as we'd like to say that he is. I think he understands that in picking on people and actually being a bully, he is being divisive. And I think he enjoys that, right? It's sort of like creating an enemy to kind of just hype you up. And I think if we were to just ignore him and let some of his comments and whatnot just kind of roll off our shoulders or our backs, he would not have enough energy to just, do as he pleases or wants. I think that is what keeps him going every day, to be honest.
Drews, what do you think before I say my thoughts?
I think that Trump is typical narcissist. He gets high off of attention. He gets high off of power and winning and being above somebody and watching them lose under him. That's pretty much it. I don't think he cares about people. Even he says he does. He cares about, the common people, and, he cares about like making himself sound right and everybody else sound wrong and then rubbing it in your face.
So I'm going to say something that both of y'all may not like. Okay. I did not vote for Trump. I am not a Trump supporter. But I really do believe that the decisions that he makes, I do think that he has the best intentions, that he really does want to make America great again. Even though it's still in the lens of narcissism and racism, I do think that he actually embodies the American dream, right? Because he has no political background before then, aside from just, throwing money at people. a businessman who has, quote unquote, pulled himself up by the bootstraps, not really, to be able to get to the highest office in the country. So there's a lot that goes with that, right? Because he understands what he represents to the common people, regardless as to whether or not you're a Republican, Democrat, whatever, that he came up there because he wants to be himself, unapologetically himself, right? So he has this whole take it or leave it attitude, which we know in the past, the common people have always complained about politicians being fake and stuff like that. So I understand that it is refreshing, quote unquote, to the lay people to have someone that is like themselves and is also a person that makes mistakes and is messy and because of all these faults that he has, and he's still where he is, and he still has yet to have gotten fired. How many times he's messed up? Any other job, he would have gotten fired. But the fact that he still finds a way, or there's something in essence for him to still maintain his job despite all his faults and everything like that, I think that that inspires people. And I really do believe that he, through his racist lens and his twisted lens, I really do think that he does have the best intentions, especially as a businessman too. Like, you know, he was definitely a huge proponent of making sure that the economy was better, etc. And you know that he has no idea about Medicare, Medicaid, anything other than that, military. None of those things really matter to him. What he cared about is money. And I think that getting money, which has rewarded him so much in his past with his business ventures, that he uses that to, and he feels like it's going to translate well in the office. I think those are the things that motivate him.
I actually agree with you, Check Meeks. I just didn't want to be the first person to say that, but thank you.
No, I do too.
It hurts me to say it. I'm sorry. It hurts me to say it, but
I think that you're right in the sense that, like, yes, he does have intentions. He wants the economy to boom. He wants people to prosper. He wants taxes to be lower for the common working man and woman. I agree with you there. I think what motivates him is not necessarily like good things happening to other people,
Gotcha.
but getting the credit for good things happening to other people.
Gotcha.
And so I'll say this: Obama was very cautious, and I don't think that helped him. He was very cautious. It was a cautious approach, and like I thought Obama was a good president, but I think there's something we all admire about Trump, whether we admit it to ourselves or not. And it's pretty much what Check Meek said, is that it's a take it or leave it thing, right? And you know what? He also, defended yesterday, saying that his mental health is at an all-time high. He's operating on genius levels. A genius does not operate how everyone else operates. And so, you know what? I think Trump is a genius. Do I like his approach? No, I do not like the fact that he has to win at the expense of other people. But I do think there's a lot that we as the American people can learn from him, right? He's kind of taking advantage of our sensitivities, and we are letting him.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd use the word genius. I'm not saying, I'm sure if he took the SAT or some sort of IQ test, I'm sure he could do plenty damn fine. But he's just bold, He's he doesn't really have
a filter,
anxiety,
common sense,
any kind of discomfort. He doesn't feel any kind of discomfort when he feels like, he just doesn't really have any feelings,
Gotcha.
So
I have a follow-up question based off of that, because, we talked about how he is a bold president. This is the first time that a president has been so accessible. I mean, he goes on these Twitter rants, etc. How do you think that his presence on Twitter has benefited him and or the American people, if that?
That's a great question. Something
I think the main thing
I want to reflect.
is that he just wants to bypass what he describes as the fake media. And I kind of don't blame him, because media is partisan, whether it's left, right, Fox, MSNBC, they're all corporations, and they're run by human beings who have political agendas themselves. There's no such thing as completely non-objective news. Maybe there used to be. My dad said, like, back in the day, and they just gave like information and that was it. But that's just not our current type of news that we have in this country. The press is biased. Newspapers are biased. Wall Street Journal is right. New York Times is left. Fox is right. And he just wants to kind of circumnavigate that. So that's kind of what his approach. I can't really blame him for that part, but not saying I like it.
Yeah, and we may not necessarily like his policies per se, but kind of with Twitter, he just kind of says what he wants and he says where he stands, right? There is no questioning. We can go back, and unless something happens to Twitter, but even all the archives, you can go back and just see what his record of him saying. And you know what? I think as long as he's more or less consistent, we can say that he probably is one of the most honest presidents. I can't believe I'm saying this.
Oh, man. All right. So on to the next question. Earlier, we talked about Trump and divide. Do you guys feel that Trump makes an effort to divide the country, whereas previous presidents, such as President Obama, he has really made an effort to unite? What are your thoughts on that?
I kind of said this earlier. I think Drews disagreed with me a bit, and I actually haven't engaged the opinion of a lot of people. I'm just kind of going off my Facebook.
Fake news.
Yeah, fake news. And I'm sure Facebook has its own problems in the way that you probably see more of people who agree with you pop up on your news feed. So I'm aware of that. But I will say that just stepping back, kind of like I was saying, aside from Trump's hardcore base, a lot of people have united against him. You know what I mean? And so in some ways, even if this is unintentional, or maybe it is intentional, as Trump might be a social genius, but anyways, in some ways, I do think that we are united against him in a stronger way. And I used Obama as a reference. I think he was too cautious and critical. And even when he was in office, I mean, a lot of violent things happened during his term, which also led to the creation and the start of the Black Lives Matter movement and group.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I don't think you can unite the left and the right. It's just I've never seen it done of any of the presidents in my lifetime. I mean, you can see presidents like Obama was a likable guy. I've talked to Republicans who are like, yeah, he's a good dude, but I'd never vote for him. They say things like that. But with Trump, I think he does make an effort to divide. And I think a good example of that being demonstrated was these NFL protests when he would call out players and stuff. And you'd see, half the people in the stands and the players standing, half sitting. And it's just a perfect visual display of a divide right there. And he knew what he was doing when he was on Twitter talking about the kneelers, et cetera. So.
Yeah.
So you think he wakes up every morning and says, "How am I going to divide the country today?" Is that what you think, Drews?
No, I don't think it's an intentional divide. You're right. Let me rephrase that. I don't think he tries to divide necessarily. He doesn't wake up and think that's what motivates him. But it just, no matter what he does, seems to create a divide. So,
gotcha.
If it's intentional or not. He's probably aware of it, though.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
He's not that dumb where he's going to be like, oh, this is dividing the country. He clearly doesn't care that there's a divide.
Yeah, I agree. And one thing I would say, too, is that one of the things that Obama has talked about during his presidency is that he says that he's good at reaching across the table, hearing the other person's perspective, and coming to some sort of agreement or compromise. There is nothing that Trump has done in order to yes, Drusy said that uniting the left and the right will never happen, but with Obama, there was a conscious effort to do that. With Trump, there was absolutely none. When it came to, for example, the Obamacare or the affordable, actually, technically it's called the Affordable Health Care Act, not Obamacare, but for the Affordable Health Care Act, the first thing that he did was trying to repeal it. And he tried to repeal it without even coming up with a replacement, without even listening to the other side to see what things do you need from your party so that we can be able to pass this new bill, because I think Obamacare sucks. So I want to make a better bill. If you want to make a better bill and you want that bill to be passed, you need to be able to work with both sides of the table to come up with something that is going to make it make your chances for your bill to pass. And I don't think that with him, he's like, I want this, and it's going to get done, and he's going to bully his way through to get whatever he needs to get done passed.
Yeah, no, excellent point about him putting forth a sincere effort to unite by listening. And there's a great example of him kind of showing this mindset. I posted it in our notes. It was at a State of the Union address that he gave every year, where he said you can go from being something to being what Joe Biden was. Mm-hmm. And then sitting right next to him was John Boehner, Republican Speaker of the House at the time. And he says, or you can go from being a barkeeper, which I guess he used to work in a bar or something, to being Speaker of the House. Mm-hmm. That's just something that Trump would never, ever do, to kind of shed any sort of positive kudos or light, mm-hmm. or on a Democratic, whoever the Speaker or Democratic leader is in the House. I don't even know who it is now. But he would never do something like that, whereas Obama actually did.
Gotcha. Just moving along a little bit. So we're going to talk about cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance in American politics. Do we think that this two-party system, Republican, Democrat, has a destructive effect on the American society?
Yeah, so I just kind of want to define cognitive dissonance for people, or do my best attempt. It's essentially when you rationalize against the truth. So the truth may be in your face, but you may be uncomfortable with it, or just simply don't want to admit it to yourself, and therefore you rationalize the other side.
I can give you a perfect analogy of cognitive dissonance. Say, for example, you got a girl and a guy and they're dating, right? The girl is madly in love with this guy. But because she is so in love with this guy, she interprets his actions as that of love and gives him the benefit of the doubt, when a person that is on the outside looks at it and say, this guy really isn't doing anything for you. This guy most likely he's a dog, and he's a player and all this other stuff, but you're like, as a female, oh my gosh, I'm so in love with this guy, he's amazing. So if he is constantly late or constantly not returning your calls, you're like, oh, it's probably because he's busy, or oh, it's because it's this. So you have those rose-colored glasses on because of the whole love thing. So I guess with cognitive dissonance, your political party is so ingrained in who you are and as part of your personality, it's hard for you to be able to step back and see the downsides or the negative aspects of your specific political party. Just like that girl that's so madly in love can't see that the guy that she's so madly in love with is pretty much a player.
Excellent.
Fellas, y'all better watch out. But yeah, to answer your question, I do think the two-party system is destructive. I was just thinking, what if we had a one-party system and we had a playoffs or NCAA type run, so you can see what presidential nominees, candidates actually make it to the end? That would be a pretty cool system. But anyways, I think because there are two sides, it's much easier for people to be critical of the other side instead of looking at their side in the mirror, right? ideally, I think as a person or as a political party or any group that you're in, you want to be able to be not only critical of others, but critical of yourself or your own group as well. And if you had to pick one, honestly, you got to kind of be critical of yourself, as that's the only thing that you can really control. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's my take on it.
Drew's?
Yeah, I despise the two-party system. I think it's absolutely the most destructive force in the United States, just because it divides into two sides, and it's shown impossible to unite both sides. You know, I'm not in any way, shape, or form like anti-American or anything when I say this, but you know, China has got a good thing going for them, and I'm no communist, but their society, from what I've read, heard, and researched a little bit, is far more capitalistic than it ever used to be. And we're not a perfect capitalistic society, by the way. So, you know, and they have a one-party system out there, and it's a centrally planned kind of politics, and everything comes from one party. You know, whether or not it's superior, I don't know, but it certainly seems far more harmonious. And, you know, America is anything but harmonious with this two-party system. I wish there were no parties and that everybody were just independents, but that's not the reality.
Yeah, that's definitely a great point. Oftentimes, when you have a two-party system, people often think, you know, when you have a dichotomy, the thought behind it is that it has to be opposite from what you think or what that being or whatever that idea is. When in reality, if you have a two-party system, it doesn't necessarily mean that one party is against the other. It literally could just be that you have two different ideas to try to get to the same, you know, the same place, i.e., you know, a better American system. But clearly, you know, with humans and feelings and stuff like that,
Emotions.
people aren't able to separate the idea from the person, which brings me to my next point, is because last year for the last election, I actually took a quiz online. I think it's What's My Side or something like that. And on that online quiz, what they had was strictly the policies and the thoughts, and you had to pretty much say you agree with this thought or you disagree with that thought, and then you would have it on a particular scale. And after you answered questions, I think it was like 95 or like 97 different positions, you then would find out which politician most likely aligned with your particular worldview. And I was actually shocked when I had it, because at that point I thought I was Bernie all the way, and in actuality I was actually more in line with a independent person. I think it was like a female or something like that. I don't remember her name. But that actually surprised me. So what if we didn't have a system where you had the face that was attached to that person's position, that person's political position? Because that way people will be able to vote for it through their pure thoughts and values. And you don't have to be, you know, all these things. Like, for example, we already know that if someone is attractive, they tend to get their way. If someone is a white male, they tend to get their way. If someone is a female, you know, you have all these different stereotypes that are associated with how a person looks. What if we took that away and actually empowered people to be able to become independent thinkers and vote on the positions themselves?
It sounds like a dating app, but like
like a blind date, right?
yeah, the person's
Like a politician.
Like, yeah, interesting. Not a bad idea. Not a bad idea.
All right. So, did you guys have any parental influence as to whether or not you were Republican, Democrat, anything like that?
I did. So it was interesting because my mother and father are the two most opposite people you could ever meet. It's no surprise that they're not married anymore, but my mother came from a very strong Democratic family, you know, like always supporting the underdog. Her father, my grandfather, was a criminal defense attorney, a very prominent one at that. And then my father came from a very Republican, conservative, Polish household in Cleveland, Ohio. Mm-hmm. And their mindsets on the world were just so vastly different. And, I was talking to my sister about this today because it's like, I feel like, your parents, we have their DNA, and I can feel like both sides. Like, I'm like, oh, I feel bad, but I also want to be an asshole sometimes and just get my money, and it's like, I'm conflicted. So yeah, I do have influence from my parents big time. That's, I don't necessarily point to either one as like directing my political compass, but I do feel it.
Got you. Dr. P, what do you think?
I grew up Jehovah's Witnesses in the religion, and they're sort of taught to not take up any political affiliations and stay neutral. So my first real exposure to politics, I would say, is in college. And I think having gone to liberal arts school, I definitely initially was geared towards Democratic. And I just think the way that I describe the difference between the Conservative Party, or the Republican Party, excuse me, and the Democratic Party is kind of going back to what you said, Check Meeks, and thinking about someone learning how to ride a bike successfully. I feel like the Republicans are pretty much, hey, just get on the bike and ride that shit. You feel me? Ride it well. And Democrats are like, hey, here are some training wheels to learn how to ride it. Except with the Democrats, it's kind of like they never take off the training wheels. You know what I mean? They're just always having support systems in place, which I don't think that's healthy per se. And, Trump and Republicans don't acknowledge the fact that, like, hey, maybe training wheels are important, at least to a certain degree. That's my take on the two different parties.
Gotcha.
How about you, Chuck?
So mine is a little bit different. My parents are immigrants, so I didn't really have like a political household. I think that my influence as to whether or not I was Republican or Democrat was really just based on my location. I'm a New Yorker. New Yorkers are largely Democrat. You see the effects of Democratic policies, especially when it comes to the underserved populations, Medicaid, Medicare, homeless people, and stuff like that. And because of my Christian faith background, I felt like those things kind of aligned with what I initially, aligned with what I initially thought, and what I was brought up with was, Christian worldviews. So pretty much just my location had that effect. Even to this day, I only vote Democrat just because if I voted independent, I felt like my vote would be wasted. Even though in reality, I'm an independent, if that makes sense.
Same.
Interesting.
Yeah, you got to play with them numbers.
Yeah, I mean, not living in a swing state, on voting on election day, I was like, well, I want to vote based off of principle. I know my vote won't like swing it any which way. I know Hillary's going to win our state, and I voted for Hillary. But I'm like you, I'm not a partisan. I don't pledge allegiance to the Democratic Party or anything like that. I'm just an independent who votes Democrat.
Gotcha. And last question of the day. How do we think that politics actually shapes children's psychology and shapes their worldview, if at all?
Well, I guess the parents' politics shapes the child's psychology.
Gotcha.
Because the parents raise the children and instill or try to instill the values. So whatever's happening in the world, I don't think is really that relevant. It's just the approach, the mindset that the parents carry with them and rubs off on the kids. Now, it doesn't always stick. You know, I've known people who grew up in Republican households and were diehard Republicans as kids and in high school, and then they go to college or they go on into the real world and their worldview changes. And I've known Republicans who have gone on and done the same thing, and Democrats and the same thing. You know, it's something that, yes, it does shape your worldview, but your worldview is constantly being shaped even as an adult. You know, I'm still learning things every day where it's like, well, maybe I'm more of a libertarian than I am anything else. You know, I mean, I don't know. It's just, you know, your psychology is shaped throughout your environment, and you see the world as you are. If you were not born in your identity, and you were like, you know, Shamika, if you were like a white girl from Utah, or DP, if you were, you know, a Latino dude from Puerto Rico, you'd have different mindsets. Or if I were, you know, a different identity or whatever, you see the world as you are. And yeah.
And I think it's important to take note that the three of us are decently privileged in that we travel a bit and we've seen different things. And that's not the case for a lot of Americans, but people who are like us and, you know, travel and see different things and experience different things. But a lot of people just kind of grew up where, or stayed where they grew up, and haven't been able to challenge their initial worldview. And to that, I'll say, I think you're right in terms of the people who get out and about and see different things. But to those that don't, I don't think their worldview shifts much. And I think that's actually kind of sad. And, you know, I think as parents too, I think, you know, for those who have like moved around and seen different things, you know, I'd like to hope that they're less intentional about like projecting their politic views onto their children. But I definitely do think those who kind of are more sedentary, have stayed where in their hometowns, I definitely think they sort of just automatically pass on their thoughts and beliefs to their children.
Gotcha.
But the question is, does it stick or not?
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I got a bonus question. So you ready for this? Okay. My bonus question is this. So, you know, we're going to bring it back to Twitter. You know, Trump has told on himself time and time again with this whole Russia debacle, right? With the vice president, etc. And we also know that there have been a number of arrests and arrests and convictions for the regular person by getting evidence on social media, i.e. the person who tweeted something about themselves that is connected to a murder, or pictures with drugs and they get arrested and things like that. So why do we think that if there is a federal investigation and you say one thing to the world on CNN, MSNBC, or whatever that is, your public address, and then you go to Twitter and say something else that is against what you said, and also then supporting your involvement in this illegal activity, yet to not get any repercussions from it? Why do we think that is?
Talking about Trump?
Yeah.
Because he's the president and has power and influence.
What do you... But I understand that, but there is a system of checks and balances, because presidents aren't invincible, right?
True.
You know, they're still people, and the presidency is different from, you know, our judicial system.
So I guess it kind of sounds like your question is, how has he not been indicted?
Yeah.
So sorry, I may have not been following him that closely. So he has said some things that could lead us to believe that he has been involved in certain probes on his Twitter account. Is that what I'm getting?
Mm-hmm.
Huh. Interesting.
I mean, look, it still could happen and whatever. Like, it's not impossible. Like, he very well might, this Russia thing might not be over. But again, the people, the feds, the FBI, the investigators, those are all agencies under the federal government, under the executive branch's power.
Gotcha.
So a lot of it just might be fear.
Gotcha.
Fear that, like, oh, how are we going to investigate our boss? Like, he's just going to fire us like he did Comey and the other, like the billion other people he fired. Like, that's just what it is.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And I would just say on a second note, it's not really about what you say. It's kind of about what you do. That being said, I'm sort of questioning the fact that you can on his, on other professional media, that it doesn't also really matter what he says then, unless he has like his hand to a Bible and he's sworn to say nothing but the truth and nothing else but the truth, whatever that statement is. But I do think, if they can't find any legitimate proof, can they do anything no matter what he says? I think that's the question to be asking from my take.
It can, it just has to happen. And until it does, it hasn't happened.
Yeah. Okay.
Gotcha.
Gotcha.
Well, thank you guys for a very invigorating conversation about politics. I don't know too much about politics, but, anytime it comes to Trump, I have a number of opinions. So to all the listeners, thank you guys for tuning back in. And like I said, I know we've been on a hiatus for a while. Check back in with us next week. And it's signing off. Check Meeks.
Peace.